Hi there, it's Elliot from Contrast, and today we're going to be talking about BigCommerce SEO, all the pros and cons with the platform and everything you kind of need to know. Make sure to stick around to the end. We've got a free SEO checklist that you can download. This will help you make sure that all your foundational aspects of SEO are set up, and it will be a second set of eyes guiding you through this process. What we'll be covering today is we'll be looking into the pros and cons, some of the workarounds that you might need to use to get the most out of the platform, obviously where we think it has its strengths and weaknesses, and to begin with, it's just more around getting the most from an on-page perspective. That's what we're going to be looking at this from the constraints of on-page. So getting started with BigCommerce SEO, we're going to be first of all looking at the from a security perspective. So digging into this, what is HTTPS? So HTTPS is Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and SSL stands for Secure Socket Layers. Put that together, which is then HTTP plus SSL is just HTTPS, and that it just means you've got a secure protocol for HTTP. And that means it's encrypted, which obviously is better for the end users, so no data can be hacked and kind of stolen. And that's kind of where you see in Chrome at the top, the little padlock, just the normal way that websites interact with HTTP is that they send requests, and that's how data is sent and received. So obviously encrypting that means that it's better from a user's perspective, as there is a lot more reassurance around that. So that's kind of more again where from a user's perspective, not only do they perceivably feel more secure, that it obviously is actually more secure as well. So most websites these days leverage it. It doesn't really cost that much more to run a basic SSL certificate, and in the case you'll find out very shortly from a BigCommerce perspective. And also to bear in mind as well, since 2014, Google has already confirmed that having an SSL certificate to making the website secure is a small contributing factor from their ranking perspective. So that's something to just keep in mind. And I wouldn't be thinking about making a site secure just on that basis. I think from an e-commerce perspective, with the amount of online transactions, card information that's been sent and received, just doing the best and what's right for your users in terms of protecting that information is a must. And the great thing with BigCommerce, as you can see here, is across all their plans, is that they include a free SSL certificate. So to just pretty much set that up, it should automatically do it on setup, but if it doesn't, you can obviously install it manually from your own server if you want to port one across. So you've got the both options there, because again there's different levels of SSL certificates, but the basic one is perfect for just kind of getting started with. So the next we're going to move on to content delivery networks, otherwise known as CDNs. So that's obviously what the acronym stands for, but why is that necessary and what does it help you achieve? So a CDN pretty much has node servers all around the world, and those are in different cities and countries. And the closest node to wherever the request is, so for argument's sake, I'm on this e-commerce website and I'm accessing the website in Australia, and the website is being hosted in London. That means that the request has to be sent from Australia all the way to the server in London and then back. So obviously that's a long distance that request has to travel, which means that the speeds of that request will be a lot slower compared to if I was accessing a server in London and I was based in Nottingham. So that request transfer is to the node is very, very close. So the way that CDNs work is that they have nodes all around the world. So it could be a case of if I'm now a user accessing an e-commerce website in Australia, that there would be possibly several nodes within Australia. So I would only have to do a short request to get this information, which from a user's perspective speeds up load speeds considerably. So obviously as well, back in 2018, again, page speed was confirmed by Google as a ranking factor. So these are things that, even though again, it might be confirmed as a ranking factor, it's more a case of you don't want to delay a user's experience and make it more hard work for them. So definitely leveraging a CDN is something that you'd probably definitely want to implement if you are selling internationally. If your hosting is done in the same country that you are registered in, perfect. But with BigCommerce, they offer this out of the box. So it's not even something that you even need to worry about, but it's great just knowing that this is what is going on in the background. So no matter where your website is being accessed from, that you will have the best possible speeds for your users. So the next thing to talk about is how to integrate Google Analytics with your BigCommerce store. So first of all, you might be asking why that is even necessary. So it's a case of, obviously BigCommerce has its own analytics suite built into the platform. This is great for getting a quick overview and digging into some of the data. But when you're working from an SEO perspective, everybody just uses Google Analytics. And the reason for that is that the suite is very in-depth and something that you would probably end up paying thousands for on the premium end. But the great thing is it's a platform that's free. So you end up being able to understand all your performance, where things are doing well, where things aren't, and kind of putting that against different KPIs across the board. So you could be measuring things from a performance perspective of how much sales revenue you're doing, or you could be doing it against traffic. There's loads of different variables and different KPIs that you could do it across the board. You could do it against bounce time, organic view sessions. Like there's so many different KPIs that you can measure this against, but it's a great way of either debugging and looking back when things went potentially wrong or traffic dipped off, or trying to retrospectively understand why something happened, or alternatively looking at trends to then future change things in your strategy that you need to do. So making sure that you've got that set up from day one correctly is something that's definitely worthwhile, because again, you can't get retrospective data. So just setting that up is something that you definitely want to do. And to be able to do that is very simple. So it's a case of pretty much just going into your BigCommerce advanced settings, then clicking on your web analytics, enabling Google Analytics as an extra tracking ID, clicking save, and then just copying across your tracking ID from Google Analytics and pasting it into BigCommerce. It's that simple, and that will then have the tracking snippet in there to kind of copy across the stuff. And that is just literally getting the script installed onto your site. Obviously, you can then go away and look into lots more advanced or intermediate strategies and guides that you want to do around Google Analytics, such as just putting filters on there for just basic blocking out IP information, so you don't skew data. Again, one of the things, if we go back 1 second, is that you can also leverage annotations. This is one thing that is great if you're working across team, that if something happens or a notable event happens, that you can literally just in the timeline click the plus button drop down here and add an annotation so that everybody can retrospectively, when they're looking in the timeline, if there's a bit of anomaly, for argument's sake, I don't know, there's a massive sales spike, you could just quickly in a few words describe and let everybody know why that happened. So when you're looking back and analysing data and information, you can see that. As well, obviously it goes the opposite way. For argument's sake, I don't know, your payment weight goes down, you could quickly retrospectively make a note of that. So whenever you're digging into data that you're like, oh, why did that happen? Or somebody in your team that doesn't know, or new hires looking past data 3 years down the line, they've also got this information at their fingertips. It's just a great little habit to get into and just makes the more use out of the platform. Obviously as well then, you could then go into further tracking around the e-commerce perspective, around the conversions as well. So that's definitely something to look into. This way then you can dig into the performance metrics. So obviously now we've kind of digged into the how to set up the integration. We're going to move on to setting up GSC, otherwise known as Google Search Console, for your store as well. It's again another free platform that Google offers, and it's a great way of understanding more of the search terms that people are clicking through to your site, and also that you're being seen for. So it's a great way to get a better understanding from an organic search perspective. So just sign up for a free account, and then when you kind of sign up for the account, it will ask you to add properties, so you can get a better understanding and get access to all this data, because you won't get this straight out of the gate. So again, why would you want to sign up for Google Search Console? Is obviously those first kind of two reasons is kind of understanding where the traffic is originally coming from, but also it's again a great place for debugging and fixing things, because it could be a case that you might not understand, and this is kind of where some more of the advanced SEO issues kind of come in, which is some rendering issues. You can get previews of what Googlebot interprets your page as. You don't have to do all these, and you can obviously work with somebody, a consultant, an agency, to help you on this side if you ever ran into it. But you can go in and see how it renders these particular pages. It could literally be you are looking into the error reports. Again, a great way that Google feeds back information to you as a user that there might actually be something wrong with your site. So again, just going back in each week to retrospectively have a look to see if there are any issues is a great way to kind of keep on top of things. So it's definitely something that I would look to sign up for. And then in terms of actually getting this information moving forwards, it's just a case of obviously adding your site as a property. So go in, pretty much add in your URL of your site that you want to kind of track. And it's a case of you could individually go and add in all the versions, whether that is HTTPS, www versus non-www. Or you just could add the main root domain. Adding the main root domain is the approach I would take, but in doing that, you just have to verify the DNS settings. So go into your domain provider, go into the DNS settings and just add a custom record so that GSC can just verify this information is that you do own the domain and it is all correct. That way then moving forwards, this information will start kind of populating and giving you this information moving forwards. Obviously, the more established you are, the more information you're going to have at your fingertips. So once you've kind of got the information, if you're a newer store, you've probably never indexed a sitemap, and Google probably is going to just retrospectively pick that up when it gets around to crawling your site. So obviously you could force that matter. And the same goes as well for if you're a larger site. If you're making big changes into your architecture or you're adding new categories and products and pages, you definitely want to make sure that either they're crawling the new pages or the whole sitemap. In GSC on the left-hand side, under index, there is a thing called sitemap. Click into that. Then on the screen, you'll just be asked and prompted to paste in your sitemap. The great thing as well about BigCommerce as a platform that it automatically creates your sitemap for you and kind of does all the heavy lifting. So all you then literally have to do is copy and paste that URL in. So as you can see here on the screen as well, literally just replace this yourwebsite.com with what your domain is, /XML sitemap.php, and then take that and paste that in as the URL, and that will be your sitemap. From there, obviously, what will happen is Google will schedule a crawl of your site depending on how new your site is to how regularly it does crawl. It will depend how quickly it will get around to doing that. I've known in more recent times that new stores getting around for it to be crawled and indexed is kind of taking longer these days. Again, so the sooner you do it, the better that you end up in the index. And obviously, if you're not in the index, you're not going to be shown in the organic search results. So it's an important thing to kind of make sure that you have got it. And then what you can then do is, Within Google Search Console, something I haven't mentioned here is instantly in the top search bar of Google Search Console, you can paste URLs in to then see if Google is indexing them as well. So it's a great way to then go back and understand some of the information around it. So definitely check back in with Google Search Console. It is definitely one of the most powerful tools you'll have at your disposal, and it is free. So it's definitely something to take leverage of. So it's a case of, to begin with, what is just faceted navigation? It's a kind of a bit of a stranger term that you might not be used to, but whenever you've been using e-commerce sites, you will have been using a faceted navigation, which is the sidebars for filtering, whether it's by price, color, size. They're the most commonly known ones, and depending on what attributes your products have will depend on the faceted navigation attributes that you want to offer to your users to do this product filtering. And the idea of faceted navigation, it literally is a category page level or subcategory, making it easier for users to find the products that they want. So that's pretty much how faceted navigation kind of comes in. It does have its drawbacks though, which is that from an SEO perspective, it can create a big headache. And we've seen this a lot on custom platforms where these they create then URLs because if you actually looked and clicked into Chrome on these faceted search filters, there is loads of parameters, so these URLs kind of get really, really long. So it's a case of sometimes these then get indexed, and then obviously you imagine for every user that does a search and you're creating a new URL, it just increases the blow to your website, and it kind of devalues it on that perspective. So the great thing about BigCommerce is that they've set it up correctly, so you don't have to worry about any duplications that are created through faceted navigations. So it's very headache-free for you. One thing as well with the faceted navigations that you'll probably want to keep track of, again through site search and also the product filtering, is that you are able to obviously then target for like subcategory terms that, again, you might want to actually allow some of these pages to be indexed, and that's something you'll have to kind of go away and implement yourselves, rather than them all these by default not being indexed, which is a great out the box solution, but more from a more advanced SEO perspective, keeping tabs on all of these kind of searches is a great way to then understand from a having done a keyword research perspective, to then knowing that, oh, okay, if we can see a little bit of volume around these terms, if we actually allow these certain faceted navigation pages to be indexed, it's a great way of adding new targeted, more long form keywords to go after, and that would be how you would go about achieving it. So kind of on the final point of the faceted navigations here is understanding and knowing which plan you are on from a BigCommerce perspective. On the basic plan, just the lower tier one, they don't offer the product filtering, so this isn't something that you even need to worry about. Then when you obviously get into the Plus and Enterprise plans, you get the ability to add product filtering in, and you get the kind of like the standard ones out the gate. It's not until you kind of get to the enterprise plan that you can really do custom filters. So just kind of bear that in mind. It's not going to be too much of an issue. It's obviously when you're doing on the Plus plan, that's like 400k in revenue upwards. So I probably wouldn't even be worrying about this till you even achieve those kind of revenue figures of targeting these smaller kind of pages from an organic perspective. You've got much bigger issues to be dealing with in the short term, but definitely once you kind of get into those revenue figures and goals, definitely looking for obviously other opportunities and areas to generate extra revenue. Looking at the custom pages you can build out through from a faceted navigation perspective is definitely something to consider down the line. So next we're going to move on to 301 redirects. So a 301 redirect in its most basic form is taking one URL that may no longer be being used and sending people from that to a new page. This is normally used when an old page is been depreciated and no longer there. And instead of getting a bad user experience and send them to that page that's no longer working or there, it automatically then redirects them to the page that is the most next best equivalent for them to view. And that is something you can decide yourselves which page you do want them to refer them to. If you're doing redirects, please make sure that you're not, as a blanket rule, just redirecting everything back to the home page. Please do it for a close equivalent product. If you can't do that, go to category level. If you can't do category level, then go last cause, go to the home page. We've seen far too many times when people just do blanket rules to the homepage across the board that it has more of a negative impact than positive. So please do bear that in mind. Obviously, again, with BigCommerce, it has the feature to easily able to allow you to edit these and implement them in the back end under the 301 redirect section. So all you literally go in to do is paste the URL of the where you want traffic to go to compared to the old URL, and that will go away and implement it. This way it saves you having to go in and edit code in the htaccess file, which obviously is not something that, if you're not confident, you want to be messing around with, because it can again have more harm than good. So this is a great kind of easy interface to understand and go in and edit. So to do this, you just literally go into the server settings and then 301 redirects, and then you'll see this screen, and it makes it very easy to implement. Obviously, as well, something that you will also notice, if you are in any product category pages and you change the URL, it'll actually auto suggest that to put a 301 redirect in place, and it can pretty much go ahead and do that for you. So you don't actually have to manually go in and change these every time you make a URL update. So we're going to move on to some more of the advanced tips. So from an on-page perspective, just getting your meta information correct. Obviously, you can do this at product, category and homepage level, as well as on your blog. So just pretty much going into the page settings and just updating these based on the little bit of keyword research that you've done and the primary keywords that you want to be targeting. Again, from a meta information, it doesn't kind of, don't keyword stuff, it's not going to have any effect, just more right from a conversion perspective, like how are you going to want to incentivize them to click through onto your page, what's your strategic positioning and kind of USPs. Write it from that perspective, you'll see a much better return from taking that approach. Again, within your metadata, you want everything to be unique. So it's a case of, you don't want to have duplicate tags across multiple pages. So take the time and effort to write these. Again, if you're in position 3, hypothetically, in the search and result page, I still might click on your listing because you've done such a great job from a copy perspective to incentivize me to click through. So again, look at your Google Analytics data to see which pages are getting the most hits and prioritize your pages from writing this in that order, because that's where you're going to see the quickest and best return, instead of starting on pages that you're not necessarily getting any product sales on. So this is where the analytics data comes invaluable, because it's going to be able to help you from understanding, on this case, a prioritization perspective. So definitely use that data to your advantage. So again, things to kind of keep in mind when kind of writing for meta titles is keep it short and sweet. So you're aiming for under 60 characters. You might want to, if you're doing it from more of a product page, and again, category page, so front load your primary keyword that you're targeting. So that means, for argument's sake, if you're writing about garden furniture and that has a search volume of, for argument's sake, 40,000 a month, that is the main starting word you're going to start with. So it could be garden furniture, family run business or something along those lines. So you put in the primary keyword to begin with at the beginning of the meta title. Obviously, again, within those as well, I'd probably end load your kind of brand name just so people know which company this website is from. Again, making it unique. What are your company's USPs? Probably put those in there. As I've already said, don't keyword stuff, it's not going to benefit anybody. And again, we're looking from a click-through perspective, what's going to incentivize people to click through. So writing from a kind of incentive perspective, have you got free delivery on your products? Again, some people might not have products in stock, so it's a case of have you got a great price, or are you what is it your company values? Is there something around that you can tap into? So again, just really think and understand what your USPs are as a business. And it's playing into the same thing on a heading perspective. You pretty much, it's very easy to kind of just forget about these, not optimize and use the correct heading structures. But just from an on-page perspective, it makes it very easy for people to skim and follow and go through. The same bit as well from a search engine bot crawling the page, it gives it a very nice hierarchy structure to read as well. So it's a case of not only does it help users, it also helps search engines understand and interpret the data. So definitely make sure to include the kind of headings as in product pages as well on kind of category pages. You will definitely see the benefit of this, and it's a case of making users' life easy to kind of interpret this information. So as you can kind of see here in this image, it's a case of we've given the main title H2, then the kind of subtitle H3, and the rest of the body is just paragraph text, and it kind of goes down the same thing. And in BigCommerce, it's really easy. You just use the WYSIWYG editor and select the heading type that you want from the drop down, and it's a case of it kind of goes all the way down to I think H6, but pretty much you want one H1 for the page, and then your subtitles H2, and kind of go on from there. And obviously, just don't go mad with these. Just think how somebody would be naturally interacting with a page and reading it. If you're looking at a page from a visual hierarchy perspective, what is somebody's eyes you want them to go to first, second, and third? Go from that perspective. And then it's a case of, if we're coming back around from an on-page perspective, we need to talk about alt tags. So this is a great, from just an accessibility point of view, allowing people to understand and interpret what an image is about, and without even necessarily them being able to see or display the image. Obviously as well, search engines are getting better at reading images in terms of the context, but that's still a way off. So just quickly adding the alt information, it's a real great fallback for them to read. So definitely just one basic to make sure you kind of include within that. So to easily go and add your alt information into your kind of product images, all you need to do is just go to the products, and then obviously within the products, you've got the your individual descriptions. You can then just click on the images and videos as you can kind of see on the screen, and then just go through en masse and go and type them in and make your life easier, than rather than going in and out of everyone. It'll just kind of speed the process up a little bit. Though if you don't want to go in it like that and you just want to go on and do this for one image, as you might do if you were on the blog as such, you can literally just click on the image, click edit, and then it will pop up, this little pop-up will come up, and that's where you can just pretty much write the alt text in, and then obviously click save, and that will have the same effect. Obviously, if you want to do this from a static page perspective, obviously you can go into the HTML WYSIWYG editor, and it will have the same effect. So pretty much left click, a border comes around the image, and then you click on the image to edit the details, and then click on the appearance tag, as you can see here in this screenshot, and then just add in the image description field, and that'll achieve the same thing. So if we're going to go and talk about writing just more user-friendly content. I don't want to necessarily say SEO-friendly content because at the end of the day, we're just catering to users. It's a case of explain it as you would in a conversation. There's no point in necessarily stringing things out, writing loads and loads of content, because that might not even benefit the users. So just think of it as you're writing as for a conversation. Obviously, you can back this up with SEO data in terms of doing keyword research. You can obviously look at questions that people are having and provide context in and around answering those. That's kind of the way that I would look at it. Don't be truly swayed and don't be keyword stuffing. It does more harm than good these days. So just really, really kind of remember that. So next we're going to talk about creating clean URLs. So this is obviously what you see in the address bar when you go onto a page if you want to share it with somebody else. It's the unique URL that is just solely relevant to that page. So again, just from a best practice perspective from an SEO, you want to keep these as simple and as clean as possible. So again, what we can see here is a potential customer is much more likely to click this clean structured URL much rather than this messy example. Again, it's neat and tidy, and it's a great way from as well. You can do this around from a primary keyword perspective. So again, the primary keyword in this perspective, what we're trying to rank on this page would be around organic honey. We could take the same approach. So that's what I would be going to say. We can change the URL of this product, and we're going to say that we're going to try and rank this honey that we've got, this product page for organic honey, and that will be our URL. And it's a case of it's just a great way of keeping things neat and tidy as well. Again, you'll probably find that you'll want to do this from around your category pages, which is like more around the collections. So as we can kind of see in this example here, that we've got two categories. So we've got one for Fred Perry of just men's, and that's a collection. And then it's a case of with the next kind of like sub-collection that we've got, which is a subcategory, is polo t-shirts. So that way they've been able to kind of rank these two category pages for probably like men's clothes, and then the subcategory for polo t-shirts. So that's kind of like, again, targeting those kind of real clean, smooth URLs. Like it makes it a much more concise rather than this kind of messy URL that's going to benefit nobody. They don't necessarily know what they're clicking on. Just kind of keeping a nice consistent URL structure is perfect across the board. So getting into talking about structured data and rich snippets. This is markup that search engines can interpret and kind of pull further information out from. So it's a case of, as we can kind of see here, is we've got reviews. It could be as well, that can be pulled in from customers' kind of reviews. It could be, is it in stock? What's the price? So these are great information, which is metadata that's kind of pulled out of the page, which we can kind of mark up, which is a great way. So the great thing as well from BigCommerce perspective is that it automatically will generate you the structured data code. So you don't have to do that. All you have to do on the back end is just input the information it needs to kind of populate these fields. So it makes your life really, really easy and really, really simple. Again, as you can kind of see from this basic image, if we were more on blog content and trying to incentivize people to click through, this would be kind of what a normal SERP would look like. Not kind of got any real extra information that's kind of making me want to click through, whereas where we've got the kind of structured data coming through, we've got the image of the recipe, we've kind of got the rating, we've got how long it takes to cook and the calories. So all this information, depending on the type of structured data, depends on the kind of meta information that's kind of pulled through. But this is also, again, from a voice search perspective, that they really lean into this structured data. So it's, again, this is a great way to optimize for voice search as well, making sure that this information is kind of filled in. And obviously, not only is it going to help you from a voice, it'll also probably help your click-through rates. So definitely make sure that you're inputting this information into your product pages as well on blog posts as well. So in terms of from optimizing for mobile, You want to take a mobile first approach and kind of scale everything up from there as well. It's a case of looking at this now, 61% of all the world's traffic comes from smartphones, and the actual transactional value from these is increasing month over month, and obviously through what we've just experienced through the pandemic, e-commerce growth has kind of just accelerated no end. So making sure that your user experience from this is really good, because if it isn't, that's going to negatively impact your SEO. So it's a direct kind of correlation between the two. They kind of go hand in hand. Again, if you're taking a mobile first approach, it means then that you're not loading unnecessarily large assets on mobile compared to desktop. So again, keeping load speeds down on that. And something you want to do just to quickly get peace of mind as well that you are okay from this point of view is just go type in Google mobile friendly checker tool. You can paste in your website URL and it'll just tell you if you kind of pass from a load page perspective that there are no assets that are being deferred or any issues that user might experience from just viewing your profile or viewing your website on mobile. Obviously as well, just to kind of follow on from that as well, is that with mobile first indexing as well, this is definitely something that it needs to be a priority, that the index will be taken from this. So if you're creating for desktop and going the alternative opposite way, you're going to probably run into more issues. So especially when you're working with your design and development agencies, they will definitely no doubtedly take this approach, but this is just more information and reasoning why you would want to do that. Again, most themes that are developed that you can buy off the shelf as well, they're developed in this way these days. So again, from a best practice perspective, from mobile is as funny as it is, and as much you might kind of take it as might not happen, but designed for fat fingers. Buttons, make them big and easy for people to click on mobile. It makes it easier for when they're interacting on their screens. Again, just don't have left pop-ups left, right and center. Only put them if they're completely necessary. So the best way to probably do that is just on click. It's just from a mobile perspective. And if you as well doing it from a testing perspective, don't just try the testing tool in browsers, actually go on devices as well, because you will end up finding things that you didn't. It's just always the case. So if you can, again, work with a development agency that has a testing lab, that's a great way. If you can't do that and doing this yourself, just try on your friends' devices, try on all your different devices, whether that's a tablet, different size smartphones, and then again desktops to laptops. You'll see different interactions with how your website performs. So then again, this kind of follows on from that, is again, this naturally scales from mobile first to just responsive design and how your website then scales. It's a case of responsive design is pretty much an industry must, and the way that websites adapt these days, it's a case of all the BigCommerce themes that nowadays are 100% responsive, so that's not something you need to kind of worry about. And again, the way that then makes them mobile friendly, so it kind of makes sure that you can access your site on mobile and on desktops of all sizes. And in terms of making sure that is then fast, it's a case of if you get something that is custom developed for you and making sure that the source code is completely clean and not bloated, that will make sure that the load speeds, that you're not running through unnecessarily long code snippets, and that again will reduce the kind of time to load. Obviously, if you're calling and loading really large image and video files, that's going to hamper in on all of that speeds as well. So the less HTTP requests that you have to make, the kind of the better. So again, looking to leverage and consolidate this as much as possible is definitely something you should be aiming to do. Again, as a benchmark, aim for sub 3 seconds on kind of load time. I know again that there was a case study a while back that for every 100 milliseconds in latency, that would cost Amazon 1% in sales. So that just gives you an effect of how 0.1 of a second had an impact on Amazon from the testing that they did. So it's a case of you can test page speeds. There are tools out there to kind of let you know what your actual load times are. So it's a case of the best that you can do around just optimizing and compressing your assets before you upload them to the website is a definite must. So we're going to go on to talk about utilizing Robots.txt files. So to start with, kind of what is a Robots.txt file? So in its most simplest format, it allows and tells search engines what to crawl. So this is a case of what you can kind of see on here is we can tell search engines not to crawl certain pages. And that way that we can kind of keep them safe, that then they won't necessarily then be indexed. It's a great way of then obviously not getting pages with parameters crawled or kind of more private pages around like the cart and accounts and user profiles. So that's a great way of kind of keeping them out. Obviously, most kind of SaaS platforms don't allow you to kind of edit the Robots.txt file. So this is one great thing from an SEO's perspective on BigCommerce is that they do actually allow you to edit this. They obviously do put a warning in place that please do know what you're doing when you go into this, because obviously messing around with the settings in here, you can do a lot of damage and obviously make your website not load. So do make sure that you understand what you're doing when going about editing this code. So it's again a great way of if we wanted to actually start to look to index some of the faceted navigations, this is where we would look to make these pages accessible and wanted to be then crawled. So pretty much we're just sending directives to the search engines of which pages that we're allowing or disallowing to be crawled. So that's the best way of thinking about it. So again, as we've kind of alluded to, this isn't common. Most sites from SaaS platforms don't actually allow you to do this. So it's do be careful. They do obviously put a default Robots.txt file in there with most kind of like of the normal parameters out of the gate and directives out of the gate. This for probably 97% of people will be fine. It's only when you want to start customizing things, and I would only suggest doing this to the SEOs and developers that actually know what they're doing. Obviously, normally, if you didn't have the ability of doing the 301 redirects in the back end, this is where you would then apply those directives. But this doesn't matter because you have the ability of doing the redirects in the back end. So this is not something to worry about. Obviously, again, this is where, as alluding to like big issues that can be run into. I've recently seen people like Ryanair and Corona that have had the whole site being de-indexed by issues that they've done with their Robots.txt file. It can have that severe impact. So again, be careful because it can really affect the revenue that you do generate and removing your whole site from Google's index. So again, word of warning when actually editing the and managing your Robots.txt file. So again, one thing also to mention that that there is a WordPress integration for BigCommerce that would allow you to have then native WordPress functionality on your blog alongside just so I know lots of SEOs and marketers these days are familiar with the blogging platform that is WordPress, so it kind of keeps quite a bit of continuity around there for them, and then you can obviously have a custom theme built on that as an extension. I know that quite a lot of BigCommerce themes do have the kind of blogging templates and those kind of built out. So that is something that you would be able to use. But if you wanted to take this a step further and then actually integrate BigCommerce into your store on a actually as a subdirectory, not as a subdomain, that is something that is possible because they do actually have that integration there. And then it's a case of some of the issues that you might run into. These are actually very limited, and it's one of the reasons why I actually really like working with BigCommerce as a platform. And this main issue really comes around quality assurance and quality testing. So it's a case of the process of making and doing tests to make sure that everything is okay. This is normally the case that we check these things from an SEO perspective here at Contrast when doing and working with developers. So it's a case of whether we've added some new category pages, whether they've, for argument's sake, they could just have a whole new e-commerce store. We then work with them just before pushing live that we want to do some quality assurance testing, because normally the thing is that when obviously a site's live, you can crawl it and you can then come up and flag all these things. It's a case of when we say flag them, it could be that they've done an incorrect implementation of hreflang. It could be that, for argument's sake, that they've just got a no index site-wide. So we're able to pick up on these types of things, which is why to us it's more a case of fixing them before they become a problem, which is again why it is quality assurance testing. So it's a case of the issues in and around the BigCommerce is you can't create local sites. So obviously, again, from then creating a local site is then creating a staging environment. There is a form of staging environment, but it's not accessible to most people. It's accessible to BigCommerce partners. We are a BigCommerce partner, and we do have a staging environment that you can play around with, but to most people it isn't. I did find on the marketplace, BigCommerce app marketplace, that there was one app that I haven't used it personally, that did look to solve this issue, but it isn't cheap, and the pricing starts from $1,000 upwards to be able to buy and implement what would then be the ability to have a staging site. So it is something that you could look at, but that's just something to kind of bear in mind when kind of developing and doing changes to your site. Some of these then would be done in live. So it's a case of, with that in mind, that you would then want to think about doing and having some tools to help either catch and flag and alert you around these mistakes. So obviously you could have a normal just crawling tool, but these aren't necessarily best meant for it. So they're actually the best tool out there that we've come across is Content King. This is a real-time crawler that will then flag issues to you from a SEO perspective that could be wrong with your site, that you either need to immediately change, or just more, it could be just a small warning that you just need to be made aware of. And again, this will definitely save you and get you unstuck out of some situations that you didn't even know that, again, if you're working and doing this for yourself, one of your team or one of your juniors changes something on the site that they didn't have the intention on doing, this would then flag it up to you, and you can get the alerts into Slack, which is what we do, and it's a great way of catching things and resolving them before they become a big issue. So to kind of like just basically summarize as an overall platform, from a perspective of pros and cons, there is outweighed amount of pros. That for us there is only the one small con in around the quality assurance testing. Again, you're able to edit the Robots.txt file. That doesn't happen on many SaaS e-commerce platforms, so it's definitely something that we like here at Contrast as well. Very easy to have clean URL structures. That can't be said about every e-commerce SaaS application out there. So definitely think these through when picking your e-commerce platform. This is why personally here at Contrast that we're using BigCommerce, because we just feel it's a little bit more SEO friendly out of the box, and we've kind of got that control to be able to play around with it and either make things really simple for ourselves, or we can kind of dive under the bonnet and tweak with things as we kind of needs be moving forwards. But yeah, definitely from my personal perspective, it is the platform that we're kind of using for our kind of side projects to kind of push them forwards with. So obviously there's been a lot of information talked about there, and with this we've got a free SEO checklist just to make sure that you can kind of go through and itemize and quickly see if you've kind of complied with all the bits from an SEO perspective that you might have with your e-commerce site. So definitely going through this is just a second pair of eyes and just making you double check that you've either done everything, because it's very easy to forget that you might have missed something. So the link's in the description, just click on there, you'll be able to download this free resource and it'll definitely help you out. So make sure to do that. And if you have any other questions, or that you think some of this is completely over the top of your head, or that you might have more opportunities and you need this bit of extra help, definitely get in touch with us and we'll see how we can help you out. And thanks for watching.